Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky last night, offering a sharp distinction between him and President Obama's State of the Union in the Tea Party response that was given by Paul. He's also author of Government Bullies, How Everyday Americans Are Being Harassed, Abused, and Imprisoned by the Feds. And Senator Paul joins us now. Senator, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
Now, a lot of rave reviews from your response. Hotair.com loved what you had to say yesterday. You're getting a lot of headlines also for the substance, which is, I guess, not what we can say about Marco Rubio this morning, who's making headlines not for what he said, but for what he did. What do you think about Rubio's Watergate sip of water moment?
Well, all I can say is we've all been there at one point or time. I still give speeches, and I'm nervous at times with dry mouth and dry lips. So all I can say is we've all been there.
But you weren't last night. Were you very hydrated, Senator Paul? Because you seem to be on your game.
Well, I think I was motivated by the fact that I listened to the president say such unconscionable falsehoods. You know, the biggest whopper I think we heard last night was, he's reduced the deficit by $2 trillion. And I'm like, on what planet is he coming from? $2 trillion, what does that mean? He added $6 trillion to the debt. So does that mean he wanted to add $8 trillion and then he reduced it by 2?
Right.
I see no way in the world. What, he was going to colonize Mars and decided not to?
It was from another planet. It was otherworldly to believe anything that the president was saying. Yesterday I thought that you brought up a very interesting point in your rebuttal. You took a shot, Senator, at both parties, not just Democrats, but for Republicans. Is that something that you plan on doing going forward? I mean, really calling out the Republican Party for its failures as well? That's not what we heard from Rubio.
I think one of the things that's out there that people don't quite realize is, when they say Congress has a 10% approval rating, it's real. People would love to have term limits, and nobody talks enough about term limits because really what happens is even when we vote for change, even when we change and send 70 new Republicans up here, it doesn't seem to happen. People are frustrated by this, and I think that's why term limits or something like that, or candidates that would stand up and support them would gain more notice. But it's something I'm going to continue pushing. I'm working with a group called U.S. Term Limits, and we're trying to get leadership in all the 50 states.
Now, there were two Republican responses given last night, one by you on behalf of the Tea Party, the other one given by Marco Rubio. So 2 speeches last night. What's the greatest difference between the two of you?
Well, I'm not sure if I can give you that, but I would say that it was kind of nice having 2 going on against 1. The president spoke for about 40 minutes, and Marco and I each probably spoke for about 15. So we were just trying to get our equal time in. And I don't think there's a great bone of contention right now between he and I. Stylistically, we'll be different. Would we emphasize different messages? Maybe, but that's the beauty of having 2 responses. So we got 2 responses to the president, and I see it all as a bonus. And I don't have a quarrel really to pick with Marco or anybody else, but I think it's helpful to show that grassroots folks in the Tea Party really still want to have a voice at the table.
Do you think that Senator Rubio still represents the Tea Party, Senator Paul? Because you were asked by the Tea Party to give the response. You both were elected with Tea Party support. So do you think that he could have given the Tea Party response as well?
Well, see, the thing about it is who represents the Tea Party is always sort of a nagging kind of question, because when the Tea Party, when anybody stands up and says, I represent the Tea Party, boy, they're quick to point out that no one person does. And even though I agree with the Tea Party and work with them on a lot of issues, I'm careful to say I'm not the representative of the Tea Party, because the Tea Party really is, in Kentucky, in my state, there are probably 10 different Tea Parties. They don't all get along with each other necessarily, but they also don't want one spokesman, myself included, to say what they represent. It's a great system because people show up. It's like open mic night. People show up and you can give your opinion. You come to a few meetings, you may well be running the next meeting. But they don't want this top-down sort of organization. They want it from the bottom up. So I can't judge whether Marco or myself is a leader of the Tea Party. All I can say is that I think we as Republicans need to stand for something. So I talked about things like school choice that I don't think are talked about enough. I talked about immigration, which needs to be talked about. I also talked about about the fact that the only stimulus ever known to work is leaving more money in the economy. So I don't want to talk about tax neutral or revenue neutral tax reform. I want to reduce taxes and leave more money in the economy, and that's the only way we would get a stimulus.
Now, Senator Paul, you brought up the Tea Party and some of the wonderful things about the Tea Party, that it is grassroots, it's not top-down. What is your take on Karl Rove launching this super PAC to target candidates that he deems aren't conservative enough or may be part of the Tea Party?
I think that anytime you run for election, it's a marketplace. So it's a marketplace out there for voters and then also for those who would contribute. You have to prove yourself, and everybody proves themselves. I don't like the idea of the official party choosing candidates. There was a little bit of that in my primary, and there was a little bit of that in Marco's primary also. And now the guy who ran against Marco now is a Democrat. So that shows you how good the Republicans were at seeing who was the most Republican. So I am for open primary process. I can't control what third parties do, but I would say that open competition in elections typically gets the best candidate.
Now, you mentioned immigration reform. You talked about it last night. Do you support the plan that's being proposed by the Gang of Eight?
I will offer my own amendment to it, and my amendment will be something that allows it to go forward as a stepwise process where each year we vote on border security. So in the first year, I'd expand the work visas, and I'd also let those with PhDs and masters get visas. And then I would have a vote at the end of the year. Are we doing what's necessary? We'll look at a report by an investigator general, and we'll vote, is the border secure? If it's secure, the next year I'd normalize the DREAM Act kids. And then I'd vote again after that year, and I'd say, are we still securing the border? Is the border secure? Because while I'm for normalizing the 11 million and even letting them eventually vote, the 11 million people, we can't invite another 11 million in illegally. So we need to fix the immigration system once and for all. And I'm not willing to take promises that the border is secure. We tried that in the 80s and it didn't work. So my policy and my bill will be called Trust But Verify. And with our amendment to the bill, if it passes, I can vote for it. If it doesn't, we'll have to see what their bill includes.
And Senator Paul, on these sequestration cuts that are getting a lot of attention lately, the president denied his own idea, which is these cuts. He went after them last night. He called them harsh. He called them sudden and arbitrary, even though they were his idea. Do you see these cuts happening without Republicans resisting? I mean, they've passed two bills to replace them in I believe, the House. Do you see anything happening to stop the sequester cuts at this point?
The first thing to understand is that the $1 trillion in sequester cuts are only cuts in the rate of increase. If we do nothing, over 10 years, the spending will increase $9 trillion. With the sequester, it's going to increase about $8 trillion. So still we add mountains and mountains of debt to the problem. The sequester is a bare minimum. Actually, it's not even a bare minimum. It's a good place to start. It has to remain in place. It's automatic. So I'm not for changing it unless we had real cuts to replace it with. In my budget, I would replace the first year in cuts with military with a much smaller cut because I think the military cuts were pretty significant in the first year. However, that being said, I'm not really for replacing the sequester because I don't think the president will sign anything better, and I don't think the Democrats will sign anything better. So I think it has to go forward.
I'd love to see a Rand Paul budget. Oh, boy, would that be good. That would be great. I would love to see any budget, Senator Paul, but Harry Reid doesn't seem to want to pass anything, and the president can't even get one up to the Hill in time. And finally, I have to ask you the question that's probably on everybody's mind, that personal question that everyone wants to know about you.
What my sign is?
No. What kind of hair product do you use? Because we've been talking about how your hair always looks so perfect every time you're on the air. So a couple of the guys in studio, they brought it up, and I figured I'm going to ask him how he gets his hair so perfectly coiffed every time we see him.
The funniest thing about it is people comment online. They're like, oh, he's got this rug. He's got his rug on again. And I say, look, you may not agree with my opinions, but my hair is my hair. Nobody gave me the hair. It's not a rug. And I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, and so they had a picture of me at the Wailing Wall with a yarmulke on, and the first comment online was, look what he's got tacked to his rug. So I got to get this straight and get this on the air. It is my hair. It's a mess most of the time, and I do the best I can with it.
So it's mine, and it's all real. You heard it here first. Senator
and if it's
Rand Paul.
If it's a mess, I'm doing the best I can.
No, it looks great. Listen, I bet you thought I was going to ask you if you were running for president, but all I'm going to say on that note is most presidents have really good hair.
There you
Just
go.
saying. All right, Senator Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Great job last night with the Tea Party response. We've been covering it all morning.
Thanks for
so
having
much.
me, Andrew.
Thanks
for
so
having
much.
me, Andrew.